Yeah, good morning. Thank you to Andrew and Agnes for two very interesting talks. We're going to move things on now, talking about our app that we've been trying to build now for the last 2 years or so, which is aimed at beginners Italian learners on our institution-wide language program. So about half of A1 on the Common European Framework.
Okay. Basically, as Billy said, first of all, I wanted to thank you, everybody, and the previous speakers for very interesting talks. And obviously, as Marina said, Agnes has been an inspiration for us for quite a long time. Our prototype and our interest started quite a long time ago. But a couple of years ago, we got involved with the Disruptive Media Learning Lab, the D-MELTT, Coventry University, which they asked to pitch some ideas, and Billy and I went along. Okay, Billy and I went along to pitch our ideas, and they liked what we were saying, so we got given a lot of support, and to just implement new ideas in teaching and learning. This is the team, and you can see some of the people. Obviously, apart from Billy and I, we have the reader in games science, which gave us a new perspective on our outlook on our research. And we have a games technology student, Sarah, which is here today filming, which is also our graphic artist and designer, and Luca and Kula, the two research assistants. They helped us a lot. As you can see, there are two students. One is the programmer that helped a lot with the app, and creative writing students to help us out with the narrative. Okay, Billy.
Yeah, I just wanted to try to contextualize what we've been doing a little bit, and to help me with that, there's been two great papers out this month. Those of you interested in mobile-assisted language learning. Rosel Aguilar's written in Calico, which I'll explain in a minute, and there's another paper by Godwin Jones, which is also looking at mobile learning. Perhaps we'll discuss some of the points he makes in that this afternoon. But it's quite interesting to look at this taxonomy. I do a lot of app evaluation with the master's students. Some of you will know that. This is a new framework, for those of you who've done that already, which I think is better, or the best one I've come across so far. And ours fits in, as you can see, as a full language learning package app on the end there, designed for language learning, specifically designed for language learning, rather than some of the ones that Agnes was talking about earlier on, radio stations, thank you, newspapers and the like, which can be used for language learning but aren't specifically designed for them. Anyway, the references at the end for that, so I thought it was a useful graphic which shows the various sorts of different apps that are available. Okay, so this is an illustration that Sarah, who's on the camera at the back there, that's Sarah, kindly did for us, amongst many others. And yeah, the point of this slide is one of the things that inspired us was the work of James Gee, who talks about this disconnect between school kids who go to school and they get taught to the test, and then they go home and play on their consoles, where they're constantly getting feedback and leveling up as they go along. So from teaching to the test, there's a massive disconnect. So we thought we'd try and address this with our apps. They're learning as they progress through the game. Okay, this is a concept we were introduced to via the DMLL, via our colleague Luca here and Sylvester, this notion of pervasive learning, the idea of integrating the formal, the informal and the social. We'll come to the details of the game shortly. This is another nice graphic, and what we decided to do was to try to develop a game using a platform which I'll show you in a minute, which involves moving around Coventry and solving a time travel mystery. And students would do this. Well, it was initially designed for them to choose to do this as a beginner's Italian module instead of doing the traditional classroom-based module. That hasn't quite come to fruition. We'll talk about that later on. Okay. Okay, so I'll just play, rather than explaining how the platform works, what we used was this Taleblazer platform, which is an MIT product, free to use, open source. And we ended up working with them and giving some feedback on how they could improve the app, which they have done over the last few months. So I'll just play a short video. Hopefully this will work okay.
Have you ever wanted to turn the world into a game? Meet Taleblazer. Free software you can use to make or play your own location-based augmented reality game.
Taleblazer is a platform for making location-based games, which are games that players play on smartphones as they're walking around in the real world and observing parts of the games on their phones.
As players move around the game world, they encounter virtual characters, objects, and choices layered on top of real-world locations. Visitors to the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium can play Zoo Scene Investigators, in which players gather evidence to put away a criminal while learning about the illegal wildlife trade. You can make augmented reality games about almost anything, from global climate change to economic history to science and ecology.
So I'll pause that there. Here we go. Okay, so we decided on Taleblazer after lots of discussion. This was the platform we chose to use, which we could, which we were able to do to use together with our developer. So the way it works is there's a desk-based interface, which is this, which is used for the programming, and then that updates an app which is available on Android and Apple. Yeah.
Okay, so basically this is the logo of our app. Like Billy has mentioned, it's still a prototype at this stage, even if we actually managed to finish it finally. Is a location-based game that we wanted to create to support teaching and learning for Italian. As I said, Marina, when he introduced me, she said I coordinate provision, but I also teach on the Advantage modules, and I decided that this would be a good idea to start with beginner students here at Coventry University. And as you see before from the pictures, we trying to find a way to be more engaging and be more active and try to break down the walls of the classroom. So thinking about inside, relating to what Agnes said before, inside and outside the classroom. So IMPARAP basically is trying to examine this and to use pervasive learning technique to language learning, and trying to use these kind of technologies to become more engaging, more innovative and more fun for the students. Now this is just a quick, again with the help of Sarah, that she will recognize a lot of her drawing here. This is part of the app, and this is the characters. That, as we said, is a game that will develop basically moving around Coventry, and is kind of a treasure hunt, if we want to call it in an old-fashioned way. But students are, while they're walking around, they have to pick up tasks or challenges, and they will have some famous important anchor points. So it's not just developing the language, it's also developing the culture and trying to find things that are common between Coventry and some of the Italian culture as well. So in the narration, as we said, that we're moving along, we have one of the characters that is Professor Eco. That unfortunately when we created it was still alive, but we are okay using the name, is everything ethically correct. We got Miss Palma, one of the teachers, Miss Torre, the museum curator, will be the, I always forget this name, the intertemporal device. And the final part is, the final character is the villain. This is called Paolo Vallassari, and is the person that is trying to change Coventry into Venice, with a lot of large building materials, as I say, yes. So this is just to give you a very idea of the Imparaf interface. Obviously, when we started this project, we had glamorous ideas of going into virtual reality, augmented reality, a lot of other things, which they changed slightly because of the constraint of the platform where we had to use Taleblazer. But as Billy said, it's improved a lot. So here you have a map where the students have to follow, and those little square or triangle, they will lit up and they will have a bit of an annoying sound wherever they move. Okay, so they have to pick up cards, there's an inventory, and the player, this is the student itself, they will go around Coventry and try to explore. So that's the map. The very good things, we had feedback for students. The map was very static to start with, and then we made it large, and so they can expand and be able to move around much easily. This is the part that is very difficult for programming, which is not our input. It seems very easy according to our developer, but is a lot of coding, which we got a lot of coding to put in, so we needed a lot of his help. And again, this is some of the part of the activity that we...
Well, what we ended up doing, perhaps one of the weaknesses, which we'll talk about later on, was, which on the one hand work very well in terms of it being easy to implement. We linked it to Google Forms and created a lot of exercises, learning exercises in Google Forms. So if we edited in Google Forms, it would automatically update in the app, which was good on the one hand, but we ended up, I think, falling into the sort of behavioristic type of activities that you'd do in any normal book. So although they were moving around, they were still doing the kind of activities that we would have, they'd have done in the classroom, rather than using the full functionality of the phone. I mean, that was partly linked as well to the level that they were studying at. With it being beginners, there's only so much you can do. Beginners level, you can't ask them to interview each other until they've got the basics of the language. So moving along to the research questions, this is what we intended to answer, and we're still busy answering, I might add. How can a pervasive approach to learning using a location-based game support beginners, students of Italian on the university IWLP program? And how can a pervasive approach to learning fit within the context of a formal teaching and learning approaches? That needs editing, doesn't it? Okay, so one of the things we came across, again, we learned from the lab. We learned lots of things. We learned that we couldn't code. We learned that when you're developing an app, you test it and fail it very quickly, and you move on to the next version of it. We wanted to create the app and have it, more or less 100% accurate and perfect before we wanted to test it, and this was kind of a bit of a tension. But we've learned since that that's how apps are developed, so that's the process that's used in the industry.
Okay. Okay, so again, as Billy was saying, we did some play testing, so which meant that we had to ask some of the students to go around Coventry. Luca, Kula, and the programmer, myself and Billy, went with the students, but we actually stepped back and we didn't get involved. We were just there to observe and trying to understand. This is our programmer and somebody else that worked with us on the project. And what we were doing, as you can see, these are the students engaging with the authentic experience. So this is the idea, is try to liaise what happens in the class, outside the classroom, with virtual characters and in a more real-life experience. So the conversation, the observation skills that were behind with our researchers, the content, the cultural encounters. And one of the, this was a briefing before the students went out. And this is the participation observation that was filled with Luca, the students, and Cool as well, just trying to find out what was the feel for the students, what they liked, what they didn't like, what was the best, what criticism they could give us, and to try to improve if we could. Obviously, this was the pre-testing. one very interesting thing happened was the sense of competitiveness that happened within the groups that were going out, because as I said before, when they move around, the anchor points will beep. So they were looking around at each other and say, oh, one group is faster than us, they're getting more tasks, they're getting more challenges, they're gaining more pieces of the puzzle. So that was very good, very interesting. This is some of the quotes, as Andrew put before in his PowerPoint, of the students. What did they say? So they really liked it. They never seen anything like that, because as we said, there's a lot done for English language, but not a lot for foreign languages. So they thought, you know, it's usually we use the dictionary. This was much more interactive instead of sitting in the classroom. Interesting for beginning, very nice activity. And at the same time, what we found was that some of the comments from the students was that they didn't know some parts of Coventry. So that also triggered the fact of the cultural element.
I think that's actually shut now, that pub.
Yes, now I know for the moment, yes. But obviously this is also the problems that we have when you have such an interactive map. If things happen, you know, we need to improve. So now some of the challenges, obviously Billy has already spoken about the limitation of using Taleblazer, of the behavioristic approach and of a type of activity that we were forced into. Some of institutional challenges that Luca also mentioned in his questions before.
Yeah. Well, we can say a little bit more about that, can't we?
Yes, if we got time.
Especially,
we've got 5 minutes.
with the institutional challenges, one of the big issues which we still haven't resolved is assessment and quality control. If they were going to be using the app outside the classroom, how would they would they do the same assessments as the students taking the more conventional module? Or would we try and do something using their phones? We didn't really address that, and we moved towards thinking, well, if we're using the app with students new to the university, predominantly level 1 students, they might need a bit of support. So we thought, well, maybe we should do a week in the classroom and then a week with the app. And that's what we're probably going to try in September. Already mentioned some of the challenges around the lack of language skills. So the kind of activities you could do at a higher level where you'd get them to interview each other, perhaps outside the Transport Museum. It's very difficult to do until you've got the rudimentaries of the language. Yes, and the lack of familiarity with games development from our part. I mean, we never even thought to start off with that we needed a narrator. We didn't think that had to be a clear story going through the app. Until it started staring us in the face and we realised, well, we do. So we need somebody who can write a story, which ended up being time travel.
Okay, and the last things as well, as you can say before anyone asks us the question, how long did it take us? As I said before, already 2 years and it's not finished. So it's a lot of time, but if you're passionate about something, that means that you should carry on and do what's best for you, and especially for the students, to make them more engaged and enjoying their learning experience.
Yeah, so this is from Rosel Aguilar's recent paper again, where he's come up with a whole new framework for evaluating the app, which we're going to use, we've decided, on the next, when we test it next time. There's language learning, pedagogy, user experience, and technology.
And we saw there's a lot of the things that actually they go back to what we used, and we can answer with a tick. Yes, we actually did follow this framework. And future developments, well, this is us experimenting as usual. So as we said, there is going to be more testing, going back to the same theory of what we said before, get some students, so then see what they think of the final product, improve, engage, and obviously with the help of Luca, they're still here in the audience, we'll have more data so that we can analyze, improve, change, and at the same time we'll be able to write up something more about what we want to do. Yeah. Yes, and Marina, we on time. I'll try to... Okay, thank you.